a goal. And I can tell people I'm taxing X for Y. We have a chance to preserve and help protect the river. See, I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with telling people it's tax decreases, pilot payments from Shoreham, and every made-up story. Because to me, that's political and it's not true. That was my issue with that. So if everybody would calm down and take a breath, I think everybody can make this happen. And that is my view. I'm not being obstinate. My record here being on the town board, when it comes to open space and the environment, I would compare to anyone on this board. And I really take issue, and I haven't taken this up with you, but with that letter that you sent out into my district, I think it was unfair. I'm not going to tell you your business. You're free to do what you want, but that's not the way to go about getting me to agree with you. I don't know what your intention was. If you were going to flip me 180 now in your favor by sending out a letter basically accusing me of being corrupt, of taking campaign contributions. I mean, that's what that says.
His letter has nothing to do with this study committee. I want the record to be absolutely clear on that. As an individual, he has the right to do whatever he wants, but I don't want you to think that that emanated from this committee.
So
it's not the
that.
policy I've ever followed in government. So by the way, I do appreciate your attendance here. In doing the 24 hamlet plans for the different hamlets, there were a few council people who actually were active in the process, maybe 50% of the town board. So your presence here is more than welcome. And Councilwoman Kepert's representative is certainly the way it should be, so we have a stronger liaison between the elected officials and any groups that are working on behalf of the town. So I want to thank you for taking the time and getting on the record.
I can respond.
No, because
there were several things that aren't correct. He is looking for calm here, and no, I need to clarify them. One of them is, and Mr. Patterson will confirm this, the commission voted simply to send meets and bounds to the state legislature at a date too late to have it adopted into law. There was no effort to end around or to inflame anything. There may have been that reaction on the part of some guy. But what I'm saying is, can we clarify that now? There was no way that legislation could pass. You say, you may refer to the arbitrary and fictitious piano over the head deadline. The deadline was perfectly real. The legislature needed to do certain things on certain timetables if we were to get that legislation passed this year. Once we didn't do that on the 29th, it was too late to do that no matter what was sent to Albany. So there is no danger of that.
What I'm saying is, can I accept? Let me just. I accept what you're saying.
But I listen
That's
to you.
enough.
Okay.
I'm not going to have cross argumentation. You made your point. The councilman made his point. That's not the agenda for today. The agenda for today are the points of your letter. That's what I would like to.
And that's what I want to do. I want to know whether the councilman would welcome a letter from the study group explaining why we did this.
I would welcome any meaningful input from anybody. I came here today as a representation in the fact that there's no obstinance on my part. I have no ill will toward any of you. One of you I'm disappointed in, but I have no ill will toward anybody. I think you tried in earnest. There are many good points to your work, and everything got very passionate. I don't want to see everything thrown out because I think there's a lot of good points, and I think cooler heads can prevail, and we can all together with the community and civics put together a plan that will work, and that's why I'm here.
If this was a meeting of my former Boy Scout troop, I would have had the boxing gloves available, and we would tell them to debate very quickly. Let's stay with the substance.
I have to leave the comment back to you.
You just got here.
I understand that. I apologize. I was talking to Senator Engelbright about a variety of issues, including this one, so I apologize for that. But from Libby's perspective, we would support this letter from criteria for common road preservation plan and beyond. We agree, with some minor words, that these criteria are the criteria we use, and I think letting the council people know why certain decisions were made is very beneficial. I think the councilman indicated he would appreciate knowing outlining the reasons why some.
Well, let me throw
That's
this,
what that does, that's what those 5 paragraphs do, and I think in our position, we should take it.
let me throw out this thought and see if it's acceptable so we can move forward. I'd like to suggest that the author of the letter, and I presume it was Dick,
Actually, I had a lot of that.
or whoever, would you recast this letter in terms of the substance that there seems to be a consensus on?
From criteria for Carman River on down, everything else is.
Send me a clean copy of that.
Okay.
Email it to me, and I'll be reading stuff hopefully by this week. And I'll ask Eva then to distribute it to all the members of the study committee, those present, those who didn't attend today. If there's an agreement, I will take that amended letter in its constructive form and put a cover letter with my signature on it and submit it with respect to the elected members of the town board. Is that agreed upon?
Fine with me?
I'm with me.
Any dissent to that?
No, but I would just add, as I indicated previously, that we have been working with council people to review that process that has been set in place. So the context has to be framed in that.
All right, and I'll also include in the record that you're abstaining from any participation in the letter.
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Councilman,
Please
Richard
identify
Brons from
yourself.
Rocky Point Civic. Your point about the information not being disseminated to the people is right on. And I think that there's a possibility that in your cover letter, not necessarily the rest of the board, but seeing the power that you have, directed at the council members to please get this information at all costs out to their constituents.
Well, in
90
fact, we
90
tried to do that.
I'm sorry?
We tried to do that.
Well,
So
I think, sir,
people put it on-
with your power and the position that you are in, we're not getting any cooperation with our council,
With who?
with our council person. And I don't want to, and again, I don't want to get back into this kind of situation. The point that I'm making is the one that you made is excellent. People don't, just because it's posted somewhere most people don't even know it exists to go look at that position or that posting. And I think that's why you're having all this backlash against the proposal. If people don't understand, it has to be simplified so people get it. They need to know exactly what's going to happen. What does TDR mean? When is it going to happen to my district? This is where the councilman comes in. She needs to have meetings. She refuses.
Well, I can't
If
control that.
I understand that, sir, but I'm saying that if you include in your cover letter, on this letter that you're putting out, that it is of the most urgency that the people in the town get the proper information. And then you'll probably get much more acceptance and input, and things will move on.
We may get a little more intelligence, but different people have different positions, and I acknowledge that. And there are those who want no additional development. There are those who want more development.
Right.
And no matter what is said, those positions are pretty well locked in concrete. All right, so to finish up on this segment of the meeting, Dick, you'll send me a clean copy of the key points, and I've heard all the comments that were made. I will also transmit my letter of transmittal, so that if any member of the committee has an objection to what I include in my letter, then you'll have the opportunity to be heard on that. So that's the way we'll proceed. That item on the agenda is finished. Ms. Johnson?
Yes, I have a question of Mr. Pavlicek. If indeed the sending of the meets and bounds description to
the legislature was without, any ability of them to enact it. What was the purpose of it and who initiated it?
Well, basically, if the commission directs us to do something, we're charged with doing it. We're going to do it.
Do you know who initiated it?
Because we're supervisors.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Gave you the answer?
Certainly did.
Next item on the agenda, and I don't know if Jim Tripp's 4 points were distributed. Did you get copies of it?
No.
Can you summarize your 4 points in simple language? No legalese?
Well,
He was capable of simple language.
there were a series of questions.
What are the 4 questions?
One was for Rich, I think it was is there consensus in favor of a $30 million acquisition program for the Carman River corridor area? That's one question.
The answer to that question is yes. We included it in the report, so I assume the answer is yes.
I don't know why the town, I
Within
don't
the
know why,
group?
I don't know why the town board hasn't done it.
I'll tell you, you want me to tell you why? It's because we're working toward putting the entire town board, getting rid of the emotion, putting the entire town board, and we'd like to see what we do and what we move forward to pass 7-0 and get rid of the acrimony. And we've been working on that collectively, the 7 of us, because this really did divide us. You used to call it a bloodbath. It was, and there was a good portion of us who weren't talking for a little time about this after the meeting. We're coming back together. We'd like to see something past 7-0. I've even offered, there's been a talk of expanding the landfill and going higher. And I think it's a good idea because it's in Yaphank. If that's approved. No. I said that wrong. Hang on. That's not what I meant. I meant it's a good idea if it passes.
Are you wearing your black jacket?
A good idea if it passes to take a portion of that money that is realized from expanding it to buy open space here and dedicate a portion by resolution when it comes back, if the DDC says yes, to take a portion of that to buy open space in the area as well, if it passes.
You could get a 7-0 vote on the acquisition tomorrow.
Okay, what's your next point?
Well,
You should introduce it.
you know, the
I might.
second question, which is really the first bullet of this letter, is there support for a goal of preserving the land
We need to see the supervisor's letter to the Carman Commission.
for 3,500 acres, 1,800 is probably, is support for the goal of preservation. And by preservation, no development.
There certainly isn't this way.
There was in the group, which is why we did not agree with upzoning. Because upzoning is not preservation.
But I know in the group there was.
Well, but there,
Any larger.
we can only speak for us, Jim. We can't speak for anybody else. And one thing I've learned is never to speak for anybody else. And I'm speaking for myself. I think the group agreed, which is why we did not agree with the upzoning, and that's what's enunciated in the letter to the council people, which is why we did it.
Your third point?
Well, the third point is, I understand it within our, there is, but I don't know whether in any broader group, whether it's MaryAnn,
I don't know the answer to that question.
There is support for, for acquisition. The question that many communities have voiced is whether all of the available funds for open space should be spent in only one council district.
I can answer that question. Both Mitch Bailey and I are on the town's open space committee, which was originally the bond
So is
acquisition.
Jim.
And Jim. We've always tried to balance throughout the entire town all of the funding. Some communities are totally built up, but they need a little focal point for a flag and a bench.
They need a pocket park.
Exactly. Other places, there are significant conservation land. And that's the committee that actually views and ranks and rates with
But in terms of a broad consensus throughout the town, I can only speak for those 28, 30 civics that I've dealt with. that the concern is we're gonna make Brookville on the Carmans, and that's the line I heard from people in Selden, Brookville on the Carmans, while everything else goes to hell.
No, that's not.
And that's not really an acceptable, solution. It really isn't. People have special places.
We've taken.
Right, people have special places in each of these council districts, and $2 million doesn't buy a whole lot of preservation anymore. So the plan as proposed by the supervisor, I think on the 20th, was simply not acceptable to most of the community. It wasn't a question of ABCO taking a position, we simply didn't.
Thank you. The third point?
That was three, what's the fourth?
The first was acquisition, the two is there support for goal, outright preservation of the property, right?
So there is.
The third one had to do with the willingness to use TDRs to accomplish the goal.
Yeah.
And the fourth one?
Had to do with, the adoption of a primary credit redemption mandate for all changes in zone to, improve the functioning of the existing plan.
There is support broadly for that, there is support broadly for that.
His last
But not
point,
at
if I
15%.
understand it correctly, is that at the present time, any private person could apply for a zone change. And in the case of a zone change resulting in an increase in density, where does the public get the benefit from that? And I think you're suggesting that if there's going to be a change, say from A1 to multiple, that there should be some benefit to the citizens of the town for granting that additional density, and that should be in the form of the application of TDR. Is that the point you're trying to make?
And I think we all agree to that, provided, which is our proviso, that there are sufficient mandatory receiving areas, because the two issues go together. So that's what the report says, and we stand by the report.
Lee, I think that's.
No, when we were talking about the code amendments, though, there was the commercial redemption in change zone.
Right.
And then there was separately DMS.
Right.
So, if the question is just with the change of zone, with the MS being out of it, that the receiving something, I don't think that will go better.
No, the issue goes together, because from our perspective, the issues go together, and that's the testimony I gave at the Pine Barrens Commission a number of times, and that's not changed our position, because the town cannot meet the one-to-one ratio on mandatory credit redemption on discretionary action. So that's the only caveat we had. You can meet the one-to-one ratio on mandatory credit redemptions on mandatory actions. You can't meet them on mandatory actions, mandatory credit on discretionary actions. That's our only component.
There's a great deal of dissent on having TDRs connected to expansion of the core, which gives as of right, forever, and variable zoning throughout the town to the builders for MF, and at a multiplier of 10.5. That is simply not supported. The fact that we might develop in this new process TDR component involved in our own town without the intrusion from Albany or the mandate from Albany of a 1-to-1 or a 10-to-1 ratio, that's really something that the people and the community and the council people will be deciding through this process.
And they have every right to do so, and I
Agreed.
welcome that,
Agreed.
except, as the commission knows, that may violate state law. And so
Only
the
if
issue is-
we expand the core,
No, that's not true.
then maybe
They're
TDR
not
don't
true.
fly.
That is not true. This town is in violation of state law today. Everybody understands that.
We know that.
And the question is, how can they get out of violating state law, regardless of whether the core is expanded or not? The core expanded, core is not expanded, that's a separate
We
issue.
could buy it at AVR.
It's a whole different issue. But I have to, like, with ESPC all the time.
Thanks, Mitch.
My pleasure. We having another meeting? Or not at the moment?
Not at the moment.
Okay. All right. And now, we'll just take it around, we'll take care of it. We'll talk about it, okay? Okay.
person will want to look at their particular council district, they know that best, and decide where we could appropriately, where they want the multifamily housing to go. That would represent good planning, instead of just doing it whenever they came up over the course of the next 10 years. If we actually knew what we were doing ahead of time and just took a little bit of time out and said, okay, in our district, we only need to have 2 receiving areas, the best ones would be this. If the town would do that and hold public hearings to get input on those specific places, we could solve all of the other problems just by good planning, just by saying, we agree, we're going to do MF, and we're going to figure out where we, that is the town council members themselves, and their constituents, want them to be.
Well, one of the vehicles for that would be the multiple family code that Commissioner Napoli has been working on. And those kind of questions would be resolved within that effort, wouldn't they?
Yeah, so I think that Councilman Panico perhaps raised the issue correctly, is that there wasn't sufficient time to allow that process to occur. It's something,
I'm saying
coming on my 3rd anniversary here, and what's always striking to me is I feel like a child of divorcing parents trying to reconcile all these planning issues into one document.
The important part that everybody keeps raising is the public input. The fact of the matter is that could happen at a single sitting. You could have public hearings on each one of them, and should and must, so that the town board members would not be abdicating their responsibility. They would simply be deciding now where an important part of the community, the housing stock, was going to be. If each of the council members would do that, they would still have the opportunity to invite all of the constituents in, Peter and MaryAnn, would come in and say, I don't want this. And then they would make up their mind. It's the absence of this action, it's the absence of the acquisition that is suggesting to me a lack of disposition to do this. If that is changed, if they will entertain that, and if they will understand that the linkage between the TDR program and the preservation of the river is not an accident, it's not a mistake, it is the only mechanism available to protect the 1,800 acres that connect the existing parcels. It's the only way to do that, because we don't have enough money to do it another way. And if we did, to the extent that his associates expand the landfill, something that we don't support for environmental reasons, but if they did and they devoted more money, then there would be fewer credits and fewer TDRs. We spent the better part of 8 weeks going back and forth with the planning department trying to figure out a formula by which you could get to 1,800 acres. If you want to do it in a different formula, let's produce a different formula. I'm all of it. What I don't want to do is to see move forward a plan that cannot produce the 1,800 acres by design.
Okay, then I have a question for the council person, but there are other elements within the plan, and in my judgment, should be effectuated immediately. One of them is the synoptic sampling of the river, so that we have an ongoing record of the quality of the river. That's something, whether there was a plan or not, but that was an element within the plan. And my recommendation was that the special group on groundwater at Stony Brook University have graduate students who could do this sampling, which is a hell of a lot less costly than if you go to an engineering firm. But that kind of monitoring is essential so that the Division of Environment that Jeff handles could have an ongoing record at all times in terms of are there danger signals that should take place. That's one of the issues the town board can consider, whether you move the planning process forward or not, but at least move some of the implementation forward. Another issue, for example, are the invasive species in the lakes at Yaphank. That's an operational issue. It doesn't take a plan, it takes action. So all of these considerations, monitoring program, et cetera, would at least in reality do things to ensure that you have some control over the river. Before I take anyone from the outside again, are there any other issues that any members of the committee want to bring up?
Just to follow up on what
Bill?
you just said, do you feel that that would be a productive thing to be included in the letter that you're about to write? To suggest, and it's really not dissimilar to what you said, that there's 30 things in the plan, and you want to throw 4 out, it doesn't mean that 26 others should
I don't want to see it
be thrown out
lost
as
in the
well.
process.
It's kind of the point Dick was making. It's almost an invitation to the board to look at it on bullet by bullet or point by point and perhaps accept them individually versus wholesale throughout the final plan. I think that's really what, I even heard the councilman say it. There's a lot of good stuff in the plan. He said it. I just wonder if that might be the tenor of the letter. Instead of rehashing bullet by bullet what we did and presented them with, suggest, first of all, I think it's helpful to suggest very briefly that there was a public process and review that quickly in your opening remarks, if you so choose. But then to invite this kind of continued use of the plan because it had a lot of good stuff in it. It came from a lot of good process and good people versus wholesale throw it out and start over.
Well, I've heard everybody. I have no quarrel with anything I've heard from any source today. On a personal basis, every plan that I've ever participated in, the first element was working with the public. Could we have done a better job on that in this study? In my judgment, the answer is yes. In terms of timing, in terms of trying to compress this within a time frame, that was one of the elements where outreach was not as effective as, in my judgment, it could have been or should have been. But that's water over the dam, to use a poor pun, and we can't go back. We can only go forward. So Dick will get to me the amended letter. I'll send it with a cover letter that I'll distribute beforehand to all of the members of the study committee. And by the way, Ms. Johnson, there's no such thing in government as a secret. And Chairman used to be fond of saying, if 2 men and a dog knew about something,
I
there are
agree.
too many talking
If there
dogs.
was a secret, we
So,
wouldn't have been here.
on this meeting, the fact that there are representatives from Rocky Point and yourself indicates that somehow
We have
you're
thought.
doing your job. You're being, this gentleman has his hand up.
Stephen,
Okay.
first. That's good.
April 10th of 2010, open government legislation went in full effect in the state of New York, and I put the town council on notice, correct, Mr. Panico? And filed a document to remind everyone to please, on this issue, make sure that everything is open and transparent. And I am absolutely, and by the way, I'm very excited and happy to hear your anger a few minutes ago, because now you know how we feel.
Oh, I know how you.
Okay, when a letter like that went out to Mr. Panico, I believe he was as angry as we are, and everyone else out there is angry for other issues. And I'm even more angry right now when I heard that a letter from the supervisor, which has not been publicly available, went to a commission to absolutely work on a project that is circumventing public trust. And even our council people haven't seen that letter, I'm quite sure. And I would like that letter to be publicly released.
I don't believe there was a letter. I know
Then there should be a transcript released.
Well,
This
that's something
is
you have
government
to take-
working transparently.
That's something you have to take up with the supervisor.
But this is why this project has failed. None of this transparency has been in place at all. We're always surprised, even this meeting. That's why this room is empty.
I can only acknowledge your concerns. There are things that are slightly beyond my personal control.
We understand that.
I've tried to keep this as open as possible.
No, we appreciate that.
The community doesn't get to tell the commissioner on the Pine Barrens Commission what to do. That's a meeting of the Pine Barrens Commission. They take all the supervisor hats and they try to advance what they think is in the interest of permit that says, thou shalt protect the Pine Barrens in whatever ways you think it useful, and that's what they did, and it's not up for debate. It was decided in 1993.
But that's not the province of this.
Well, that's what he's complaining about, and that's...
I understand that.
In closing, everyone had an opportunity to voice their concerns on Resolution 380. It was on Resolution 380, which was passed by all 7 members of the Town Council unanimously. That proposes a process in which we will decouple these issues. And I think everyone in this room is free to come before the town board and tell them, and they should have done it on the 24th, why they should not pursue that course. However, to do it now is to create a schizophrenic behavior pattern in the town of Brookhaven. Are we doing this or are we doing that? And as a civic leader, I'm out there, I've been out 4 nights this week explaining what we think is community-based planning. And community-based planning is the one thing that didn't happen in this process. And I'm really going to take umbrage with anyone who says my ability to speak without being able to vote in community-based process is bull. It's not. I need to have community-based process. The people in this town object to the process that went forward here of special interest in private developing plans. And if there were no special meetings, I'd like to know how the plan that was presented on March 29, 2011, and the plan that was presented on March 29, 2012, managed to change. Was it changing while it sat on a shelf in Tullio's office? No. It was changed by people working to make a change. And they did that without announcing a public meeting or holding any kind of a session in which the public could have been participatory. And I don't even know if you were there, Dr. Koppelman.
No, I wasn't.
So, I mean, really, how can you have a study group without its chairman moving to change a plan and then submit that plan to government to act on? It is absolutely abhorrent and it is disgraceful. And this process that we have proposed and are working very actively for our councilmen to implement will involve community. And we welcome everyone at this table to take their rightful place as members of the community and bring their issues to the town board and let it go the way it's going to go. You win some, you lose some. I agree, we do need some TDRs. But if we're going to be extorted by the Libby community because we don't have things, there were too many people trying to shove too many fruit out of the big jar. And everybody thought we were saving the Carman River. We weren't doing that, and we all know that now. We were doing 2 other agendas. And that was right from the get-go. And it only took till the people actually got that there was outrage. And I'm really sorry that it became so really disgraceful. We have always worked well with the environmental community, and this breach is really regretful. It is really a sad turn of events. And it is a turn of events that has been continually harped on, opened up. It is a wound covered by a Band-Aid that somebody keeps ripping off, and it just is not going to be productive. So I thank you very much for allowing us to speak here. It's very important.
You don't have to thank me for that. I've run all my meetings the same way.
No, I think we do have to thank you, because if it was up to other people on this committee, nobody would say a word.
Well, that's not...
Okay? No, you made the point, and I thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Koppelman, but we're going to continue to push for community-based planning and a community-based process of our council people, and we welcome anyone who wants to be part of that process.
That's fair enough. And either you have that on the record, just before I recognize Dick, is there anyone else who has any point they wish to bring up before I adjourn the meeting?
Yes, I have one more. I have a question on, apparently from what I've been told, there's a tear in the liner in the town dump. There's a tear, there's a leak. And there's a toxic plume heading south. Now, my question to you, or this committee, is all this Carman's River work being to preserve and make sure everything is fine, is that all going to be for naught when that plume hits the river?
Which plume?
There's a tear in the town dump liner, and there's a plume.
DOTs.
Okay?
DOC?
Yes.
Now, it seems to me that all this arguing and venting and everything else may be just stupid. Because if that hits the river, everything else we do is gone.
Jeff?
News to me.
News to you?
We've not been told of any news from minors, so.
Okay, well, we heard it.
Bill, who would,
There's the flume, you're not aware of the flume?
It's in Beaver Dam
Oh,
Creek.
the old
oh,
flume,
Beaver Dam.
the old flume.
Yeah,
flume
and the
that-
landfill is not in the watershed. Hello?
No, I don't believe anybody said that, it's on the map.
It's on the map, it's not in the watershed.
Isn't it in the middle of the pine boughs?
Been carved out.
It's been carved out.
But
Talking
is
about
that,
the investigation
is
that
that
was
gonna
done 3 or
stop,
4
is
years
that
ago.
gonna stop the
Yeah.
flume?
Oh, okay, right. So it's all intercepted by Beaver Dam?
Is that gonna stop the flume from going where it's gonna go?
Can I clarify?
Yes.
It's in the watershed, okay? And I wanna make sure, as council of the town, that the information that goes out is correct. So let's make sure that we have that on the record, it's in the watershed. Let's not say that it's not. I just wanna make sure that's clear. It's on the map.
And what steps are in this plan to remediate or to include steps to take the elephant out of the room, so to speak? If it's indeed in the watershed, it poses the single largest threat to the river.
Well, that's not necessarily true, because even if it's within the watershed, if you look at the CDM particle tracking models, the particles may not, the water quality may not well up until it's further down into the tidal portion of the river, even
Oh,
if it's
so the
intercepted by
bay
Beaver.
doesn't count.
Well, this is a
Well, that's
river
where,
plan.
that's where it all ends up. It all ends up there.
The fact of the matter is, if you're asking, where is it in the plan? It isn't anywhere in the plan because there isn't a plan. And the only people who have authority to alter the plan as submitted a year ago, February, was a committee of the town board and 2 council members who comprised that committee, Mr. Panico and Ms. Kepert. So they were to review the plan and make recommendations to the town board, and I suspect we're still going to hear from them. But nobody else is authorized to change anything, with the exception of recommendations that would come from the 2 of them and the supervisor. They were the committee that was assigned to review the Carman's River plan. And I think that Mr. Panico's suggestion that he is prepared to do that and to look at those things that are good and useful in whatever plan is developed. They all of the 4 of them who disagree with this plan have, in fairness, have said that they will go forward now and they will produce a plan. This is not a plan. 380 was not a plan. It was we think we should do something. It was a processing vision, I think is what the sponsor called it. But we need a plan. And so whether it's 7-0 or 5-2 or whatever it is, we need to find out what we agree about. And once we have that, I think that you will find that the things about which we have disagreement will be smaller rather than like everything. And we can work on those, and in that way, that's going to separate people who really mean it when they say they want a Carman's River protection plan and they support multifamily housing. That will be the litmus test. Once we've looked at all of that and found out how it all gets done. If somebody can do it better, if nobody, I'm speaking for everybody that's having the calendar. The members of this group would be happy to have anything that's in this plan or that was presented a year ago, February, improved upon.
well,
But the delegating and the whining about process is preventing our doing that, and that needs to stop. We produced a plan. Now it's time for those who did not like that plan or the process to produce a plan that works.
And we're doing that.
With a process that works.
It's
It's just not going fast enough for you.
It's
no argumentation. Any
It's
other
going
comments from any members of the study committee?
One last comment. It shouldn't be the committee's way. It should be the people's way, and that's why we have the public trust and an elected board council in the town that appoints and creates a proper planning and zoning department and all the oversight that we as voters have a sphere of influence and control over. Once it goes to a commission and that public trust is sacrificed by giving someone the leading role, that's where everything goes wrong. After all, in 1776, we got rid of the king's landlords, the lords over the land that told the farmer to move because the king wants a fort here. The battle was over the public trust, not a tea bag.
Well,
And that's what we're here for.
I don't believe in argumentation because it's usually not productive. But as a professor, I'd have to take a slight exception. The United States is not a democracy. It's a republic. That means when you elect officials, they are to represent you. Hopefully, they'll represent the majority citizen point of view. They're not under such a compulsion. There's nothing in the Constitution. When you elect a member of Congress, that person can vote their conscience. Hopefully, it'll coincide with the people. But your view of how democracy works in 1792 was reasonably accurate if you were a property owner. It didn't apply to all the citizens. But even if it had, this is no longer 1792. Whether you like what the Congress does, or the President does, or your town board does, once they're elected, they have the responsibility of voting their conscience. Sometimes it'll agree with the majority, sometimes it won't. But that's the nature of the process. So the ultimate power is only held by you as a citizen comes the second Tuesday after the first Monday. The ballot box is the only time the individual citizen has the ultimate power. Okay? And if you're in my class, I'd give you an A. But you're not.
I take exception to an amendment that takes jurisdiction and that decision-making and transfers it from the elected to the appointed. That's a big difference.
Actually, what he's suggesting is that this group of citizens was not that group of citizens, and so this group of citizens should not have been heard. Let me suggest to you that in the case of Ms. Johnston,
I would appreciate it if you would not do that, Dick.
she
And Dr. Councilwoman, I would ask you to please stop this.
Well,
I'm
told
tired
us
of
that
being
she
attacked.
would not participate in the process before the study group began.
Not true, and I'm not going to
let's
start.
close the
You
meeting.
need to stop
with
this.
Just a moment, please.
I'm serious.
I think past history doesn't help the process. Perhaps if Ms. Johnson had been part of the original study group,
She declined to be.
I did not, liar.
I will
okay.
now take this
Dick.
matter.
Good. I welcome it, sir.
There were 6 people in the room.
I welcome it, sir.
let's
Mr. Amper, you came into the Rocky Point Civic and slandered all of our officers with lies on video.
And that is also untrue.
Very true.
is adjourned.
Let's go.
Thank you for adjourning.
I'll give you a download location for the video. Unfortunately, your little tirade, I had a phone call in between that interrupted it. I got part of it.